Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Can you all hear me? Please, can someone confirm that I'm audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you for that. Good evening once again. Welcome to class. Thank you guys for joining in. Please, before we proceed, I would just want to kindly ask if it's possible for those who are on the call to send reminders to their different groups that class has officially started so that we can have more people join in the session. Please, you can send reminders to your groups, to your different subgroups, telling the other mentees that class has begun. So, good evening once again. Welcome to week 5 of the JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship program under the Data Privacy and Protection class. We've gone through week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and now we are in week 5. And it has been, I don't know from how it has been on your end, but from my estimation, it has been really, really interesting going through the last 5 weeks, interacting with different mentors and getting to see their perspective as it regards to different subject matters that pertains to data privacy and protection. Um, Nonetheless, today will be no exception. We expect to have a few mentors join in today, help us run through the topic, and also we'll be having them give answers to our questions. So please, I want you to talk in, sit tight, and enjoy the class. I also want to kindly encourage us to try as much as possible to engage the mentors while as they join in. Use your emojis, send messages in the chat box. Let us know that we have active participants in class. So moving on, we started announcing last week, I think the week before, sorry, not last week, that we are offering a free legal clinic for creatives, innovators, for creative innovators, entertainers, athletes, and startups. Those who may have peculiar issues within that sphere, right, or within those spheres, you can get a 20 minutes consultation slot with our professionals. You can also get your contract reviewed. Our professionals will be doing that free of legal fees, right? But we just kindly ask that for those that you share the flyer, right, you tell someone, you reach out to a colleague or a friend, letting them know that this is what we are offering, right? So please, I would like to encourage us to spread the word about the Gypsy Free Legal Clinic. Moving on to introducing our mentors for today. Our first mentor for today, he has unfortunately been absent in a few of our classes, but we are hopeful that he will be present in today's class. I think he has been around for one of our classes so far, but we'll be expecting Mr. Solomon Okedara. Mr. Solomon Okedara, for the class we got to interact with him, it was a very interactive or a very interesting discourse that he puts up, and we hope that when he is back, or if he is able to join us today, we'll be having another very interesting discussion from his end. Our second mentor that we're expecting today is someone who has also been in a few of our sessions, also Mr. Ridwan Badmos. Mr. Ridwan Badmos has helped run through some of our subject matters. He has given his insights, his technical knowledge, and his analysis based off of the topics that are assigned. So we look forward to having him in class again, and we look forward to hearing from his vast wellspring of information or knowledge in regards to today's topic. Moving on, we have a new mentor today, and we expect her to be joining us shortly. That is Jadisola Esson. Jadisola is a corporate governance and compliance professional with vast experience in legal/regulatory compliance, risk management, corporate administration, governance, and secretarial services. She is skilled in legal governance and risk accessory, contract data management, regulatory compliance, and secretarial practice. Thank you so much, Ma, for joining. I can see you just joined in the call. We are happy to have you with us in class. You're welcome. We look forward to hearing from you and also getting your insights on the subject matter of today. Last but not least, we also have another new mentor that we're expecting in class. I am not sure if he's already here, but I'm sure if he's not, he'll be joining us shortly, and that is Mr. Samuel Ungu. Sorry for that pronunciation. Mr. Samuel is a seasoned tech lawyer with cutting-edge experience in data protection, artificial intelligence, fintech/cryptocurrency, and startup advisory. He was nominated by Legal Ideas and Privcom as a rising star in fintech and data protection respectively in 2023. He is a member of Center for Artificial Intelligence and Data Policy and a fellow of Pan-African Youth Ambassadors for Internet Governance, a member of Fintech Association of Nigeria, stakeholders in Blockchain Association of Nigeria, and Nigerian Bar Association. Samuel is an associate at Udo Udoma and Bello Osage. Thank you so much, Mr. Samuel. We look forward to hearing from you and receive your discourse on today's topic. So our topic for today is navigating data protection regulation, the essential role of a data protection officer. So we'll be looking intricately into the roles of a data protection officer and just generally navigating data protections regulations. So far, we have only one of our mentors on call for now. We hope that shortly others will be able to join in. But just to kickstart the session itself, we'll be giving the floor to Ms. Jadisola to help us run through today's topic. So Ms. Jadisola, you're very, 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 very much welcome. We're happy to have you in class. We look forward to hearing from you today. Thank you so much for joining in.
Sorry, apologies. Before Ms. Jadisola speaks, Samuel is on the call. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Sorry, I did not notice. Thank you very much, sir, for pointing that out. So we have Mr. Samuel and Ms. Jadisola with us. Okay. I think just for a little role reversal, I think we would like to start with Mr. Samuel. Mr. Samuel, the floor is yours, sir. We would like to receive your presentation on today's topic, sir. You're welcome. You have 20 minutes, sir, for your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I've been a member, I've been associated with this academy for a while. I'm just surprised that I think there is a change in the presentation because what it used to be was that the mentees will present and then the mentors will run through the presentation based on what they have presented. So, but it seems that's no longer the case. So the reason why I had to say this was that I didn't come with any slide, right? So I'm just going to speak from on top of my head. And I don't know whether that is okay because nobody informed me about this change.
That's fine, sir. I think that's okay. You can just speak from the top of your head, and we apologize about not reaching out to you about this format that we currently adopted.
Okay, that's fine. Just as you said, we are speaking, or we'll be talking or discussing about the role of a data protection officer. The topic is navigating data protection regulation, the essential role of a data protection officer. How do I start? Okay, so when you look at the provisions of our law, there is none that define the meaning of data protection officer. You look at the Nigerian Data Protection Act, you look at the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, the implementation framework, none defined the meaning of data protection officer. However, I'm aware that Section 32 of the Nigerian Data Protection Act provides that a data controller shall appoint a data controller of major importance shall appoint a data protection officer or shall appoint someone that is knowledgeable in data protection law, right, to advise the company and also to serve as a middleman between a company or between a data controller and the commission. So when you look at this, and then of course you look at other materials, articles that scholars and thought leaders have written, you will know that a data protection officer is someone that advises the company on the implementation of data protection law, someone that helps a company to manage the processing of personal data, someone that assists the company to implement the obligations under the data protection law. So yeah, now when you look at the question that should be asked is what is the requirement for appointment of a data protection officer? When you look at, just as I said, when you look at the provisions of the law, it's not clear-cut as to the requirement, or the law didn't specifically state the requirement for appointment of a data protection officer, nor will you see anywhere where the law stated the certifications or the credentials a person must possess before such person can assume that position. So just as I cited Section 32 of the Nigerian Data Protection Act, which is the main data protection law or main legislation on data protection law in Nigeria, when you look at that clause very well, you will see that there is just one requirement, which is someone that is knowledgeable in data protection law. So it then means that anyone that can prove that he or she has sufficient knowledge of data protection law is capable of occupying that position of the position of a data protection officer. So, and just as I stated, what are the roles of a data protection officer in a company? He or she is to advise the company about the company's obligation under the Nigerian Data Protection Law or under the Nigerian Data Protection Act and the subsidiary legislation. So when we're talking about the subsidiary legislation, we have the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, we have the implementation framework, the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, the implementation framework of 2020. We also have the several guidance notes or notices issued by the NDPC, both the one that seeks to sort of entrust some obligations on the public institutions on how they can process personal information, and so many of them. So yeah, so and just as I said, they will advise the companies on their obligations. They will help the company to implement those obligations, right? They will also help to draft policies, create the required awareness within the company, and there is what we call privacy statements, all of these things, they will help the company along with the management of the company to decide or to create the policies of the company, the privacy policies of the company. And last but not the least, they are supposed to liaise between the company and the commission. Now, under the GDPR, a data protection. Sorry, you said I have how many minutes? So I don't exceed my time.
20 minutes, sir.
Okay, 20 minutes. All right. So under the GDPR, one of the requirements is that a data protection officer must be independent, right? So what that means is that a data protection officer is placed high and above an ordinary employee of the company. So he or she is not answerable to any person in the company aside the management of the company. So he or she reports directly to the management of the company. Why is it so? GDPR is very intentional in crafting that clause in order to give the DPO the required independence to perform his work. So under the GDPR, the DPO is required as a quasi-regulator, right? So you have that obligation to ensure the proper implementation of the GDPR, and that the DPO is not subject to maybe ordinary dismissal that an ordinary employee under a company may be subject to, maybe because he did one or two things, or the way he implemented his work, or maybe he's proactive in his duties, which may in a way, right, not augur well with the way the company intends to run its product. Therefore, the company can just wake up and dismiss the DPO. So under the GDPR, that doesn't apply, right? However, here in Nigeria, the provisions of the NDPA didn't provide for that. When you look at Section 32, it didn't say. In fact, it says that an employee can assume the position of a data protection officer. I failed to mention that under the GDPR, an employee cannot assume the position of a DPO. So you cannot effectively combine both. And the reason is because just to protect the duty of confidentiality, right? And the fiduciary duty, attached to that position. However, in Nigeria, it suffices if an employee assumes that position. So the law is very silent on whether a DPO should be an independent person or shouldn't be an independent person in Nigeria. So that is key thing you have to know about the data protection officer in Nigeria. So there may be challenges, of course, few challenges that you may face as a data pro. Okay, so I would like to speak about that when you have done your presentation, and probably from your presentation, I will learn about that. So with just this few explanation of mine, I believe I've been able to do a good intro to the role of a data protection officer. And I will now yield mic to the next person. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Samuel. We really appreciate that introduction from you. It was precise and it was very, very easy to understand. Thank you so much, sir. So moving on to our next mentor, please, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Jadesola. Please, my if you're with us, we would just like to also hear from you in the next 20 minutes, your introduction into the topic.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here again. So like Mrs. Samuel said, the previous times, the very first time JIIPCC actually reached out, I did a slide and I think we ended up not using it. And then afterwards, it has been like you said. But this particular period, I think her name was Sophie. She sent me so much reminders. I started seeing her in my dreams. So yesterday, I just did like and that's the only reason why I have something to present this evening. So if I quickly share my screen, and then we can pick it up from there. Yeah, so please confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, ma'am, we can see your screen.
Excellent. Okay, so Mr. Samuel has said everything. I'm going to struggle to find one or two things that it didn't mention. I don't even think if there is anything it didn't mention, but I'll just quickly run through my slides. So basically, this is just showing us a brief background of the rules and laws and guidelines that we have had with regards to data protection. So up until, I say it a lot that up until a few years ago, right, data protection was not a thing in Nigeria. And I don't think there is don't let me say it like that. Nigeria is one of the countries that has so much data that it is clearly careless about, right? It is one of the countries that have we have so many, and so it is inevitable that we have as much data as many people as we have in the country. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So in the course of my presentation, or maybe after all the presenters present, I may touch more on that. So in the globals, we have, before we had the GDPR, before we had a law that codified all the that was specifically dedicated to data protection, we had bits and elements of privacy and data protection elements in some regulations. So in the global space, we had the UN Human Rights Declaration of 1948, we had the Convention 108 and 108 plus, we had the AU Directive of 1995 before we finally had the GDPR of 2018. We also had a 2016 EU GDPR that was issued in 2016, right? But the 2018 one was like more put together, if I may put it like that. So in the African space, we had the Malabo Convention of 2014, and we had the ECOWAS Protocol of 2010. So going quickly to what in
Miss Jalisola, are you with us? Sorry, we can't really hear you.
Oh, sorry. I was muted. Can you tell me the last time you heard? Do you know the last you
I can't really remember particularly, but it's immediately when you just immediately turned into this slide.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, let me just start afresh. So I said that just like I mentioned, we had bits and elements of data protection and privacy just entered in some regulations before it was finally codified, right? And in the Nigerian space, we had Section 37 of the Constitution that spoke about the privacy of Nigerian citizens with regards to their correspondences, telephone conversations, etc. Then we have Section 8 of the Child Rights Act providing for the privacy of the child. Before we now had the NCC Consumer Code of Practice Regulation of 2007, which mandated all telcos to put data protection safeguards in place as part of their operations. And then when we finally began to see more coordinated regulation or provision of data protection. We saw the data protection guideline of 2013, and then the Cyber Crimes Act of 2015, which criminalizes any form of interference in, I think I caught it somewhere here. It's basically, it protects interference with the substance of data of individuals. So the service provider must keep information for a period of at least 2 years, right? And ensure that the right of privacy and the protection of the data is protected. We also had the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation of the 25th of January 2019, which was issued by, we had the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation of 2019, the implementation framework, and then the final lights at the end of the tunnel, which is the Nigerian Data Protection Act of 2023. We had the GAAD of 2024, and finally the guidance notice that specifically, shed more light on the meaning of data protection of what's that word now? Data protection of data controller, of I don't know why the word is jumping. Can somebody remind me of the phrase? It's something I use every day. I don't know why it skipped my mind. Of major importance. Thank you. Data protection of major importance. Okay, so moving on. We've had regulatory bodies that have been responsible for data protection before we finally have the NDPC, which is what is responsible as solely. So like Mr. Samuel had said earlier, we do not have a particular act, or we do not have somewhere that the data protection officer in itself is defined, but we can pick inference and what we believe a data protection officer should be or should do from the guidelines and the laws that we have seen. So I don't want to stress the beginning because he had already mentioned it. So let me just go straight to the roles of the data protection officer. Specifically, the NDPA highlights three main responsibilities of a data protection officer, and that is to advise the data controller or data processor and their employees who carry out processing made under this act, monitor compliance with this act being the NDPA, sorry, I copied and pasted, and related policies of the data controller or data processor, and finally act as the contact point for the Commission on issues relating to data processing. However, from previous regulations that we've had, and even on the job, I've been able to come up with additional roles of the data protection officer. And if you look at it clearly, you would see that it kind of fits under either of these three broad headings. So the first is training organization employees on regulations, compliance requirements. So basically, the data protection officer is the data protection champion in the organization, and you are supposed to train, or you are supposed to teach or educate the other employees in the business what they need to do with regards to data protection. So like Mr. Samuel had said earlier, even though there is no prerequisite, so to say, about the data protection officer, but when registering, right, on the portal, the new registration that they are just done, you would see that one of the important elements before you are able to complete the registration as it relates to data protection officer is that you must provide evidence, or you must state that the data protection officer had done this particular training. I think you also have to provide evidence because they will ask you for the certificate number or something like that. So you can infer from that that one of the prerequisites is that the data protection officer is trained. So from that training, and obviously from self-development and learning on the job and familiarizing yourself with the rules, when you get that knowledge, you're also expected to share it with the rest of your employees. So like I said earlier, Nigeria is one of those countries that is very careless with data, and unfortunately we have a lot of data collection even from places that are not so organized. So you go to churches, and when people are coming in, there is an attendance outside, and people are putting their name, they're putting their gender, they're putting their email addresses, they're putting in their all of the personal details. And you would find for big events and stuff, you have people more than 500, you have in some cases, you have people more than 1,000. And you would be surprised. Some people, before filling their name, they go through the list and this particular person has been looking for their number, and they can get it from them. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So there's a lot of gaps that still has to be covered when it comes to data collection points. I think we'll talk more on that. I hope one of the mentees touch on it in their presentation so that we can shed more light on that. Then we also have conducting regular assessments and audits to ensure compliance with data protection laws. So we all know that at least once in a year, you're supposed to have the DPCO come in, do an audit of the firm with regards to data protection, and then file the necessary returns. Now, for a data protection officer who wants to have like a good recommendation or a good report after the exercise. At least that is what I encourage my colleagues and I to do on my side. We do our own in-house audit, right, before the external auditors come in. So when we do our internal audit, we do our internal audit like towards the end of the year, and then we are able to see the gaps that we have, right? There is a general guideline that DPCOs would typically use. They will not go outside the rules. They will not ask for what the laws have not asked them to ask. So based on all these provisions, we do our own audit. And where we see, we try to cover it before the external DPCO. This is not because we are trying to do window dressing. It's because we just want to identify the gaps. We want to cover it for the sake of the safety of the business, right? Because all these things have advantages to the business. It reduces your risk, or at least it allows you to discover the risk on time and then know how to address it. So it's not just so that you're able to get a no exception report, or it's not like you publish the report on your website. All you put is that what's that thing called? That badge that you get after you file. But at the same time, it gives some kind of comfort, when you know that you have been able to close the gap before the external DPCO comes. Maintaining records of all data processing activities conducted by an organization. Now, one of the important things in compliance generally is that we are able to keep records properly. You are able to, defend any act. You are able to access anything that has to do with all the organization's activities. So as a data protection officer, you are supposed to maintain a record of all your data collection points. How are you processing each of these data? What is the risk to collecting this data? What kind of breaches can occur? What kind of liabilities are we going to be open to for every form of data that you collect? For instance, myself, sometimes I just go through some of our forms and I see some requirements or some questions on the forms when maybe for engaging a client or for engaging a vendor. And I ask the process owner, why do we need this information? Now, the more information you have, the more responsible you are to the data subject and the more your risk. So what I always preach is, if you don't need it, then don't get it because you don't need it. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Then the data protection officer is also responsible for responding to data subs to inform them about how their personal data is being used and the measures the organization has put in place to protect their data. Now, typically, this is supposed to be in your privacy notice, in your privacy policy, be on your website, probably be in your, it is advisable that it is in all your data collection points. So it is the task of data protection officer to go through all your data collection points and make sure that you have the rights of the data of data subjects stated there, and you let them know how you are going to process their data. The data protection officer is also responsible for monitoring data subjects' requests and to have their personal data erased. Sorry, I think I've mixed that up. But what number 5 is trying to say is that it is the role of the data protection officer to ensure that the personal data of data subjects are accessible, can be corrected, and whatever their queries are regarding their data is is attended to in due time. Now, in my space, what I find often is the need for data subjects sometimes to update or correct their data. Now, nobody is infallible. Sometimes you want to write GAED and you find yourself writing GEAD. Your process should not be such that you cannot correct your data subjects information like that. You should be able to edit the name. The person says, oh, maybe I did a change of name, or you spelled my name wrongly or something. You should have a process that will allow the data subjects correct what they have with you. You understand, and update it also. Okay, so I hope I'm still within time. All right, number 6, the data protection officer is also supposed to ensure the data is processed in line with the principles of the NDPA. I believe I've already touched on that. Engage the DPCO for the annual audits. Notify the NDPC apologies of data breaches. So that is provided for by section 40 of the NDPA. So it is expected, right? Like I said, if you do, what is it called? I think that is what's the name of this thing now? Data protection impact assessment. You can typically know or you would be able to categorize, right, places where you can have data breach. For instance, you people have a fully remote work structure, or you have an hybrid work structure, and people go home with their phones, people go home with their laptops. When my firm was going to go, start hybrid work mode, it was one of the risks that was highlighted, and we realized that we need to now teach employees on the importance of protecting gadgets like their phone. Typically someone would say, oh, it's the laptop that the organization has given me that is their property. They should have no rights with regards to my phone. It's my personal property and whatnot. As long as you are using that, your private phone, to do some office errands or to do some office activities, and because of that, from your phone, you are able to have access to certain data of your clients, your vendors, or other stakeholders, then you need to take extra precaution, because the data on that phone is now not just yours, but you are also, the people are able to access other people through your devices. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So anytime there is a breach, it is also the duty of the PO to notify the NDPC. File the annual, well, you are not the one filing the annual returns, it is the DPCO, but that is contained in section 34 of the NDPA. Then ensure data touch points or data collection points contain privacy notice and the abridged version of privacy policy. We've already touched on that. And then maintain an inventory of third-party data controllers or processors who process data on behalf of the company. That is very important. As part of the records that a DPO must keep, you must be able to say off the top of your head people that you are exposed to when it comes to data of your employees, of your customers, of your other stakeholders. Basically, you must be able to, because this process we are unable to, let's use a printer for instance. I know that is general to a lot of businesses. So for instance, we need to print ID cards, or you need to print, okay, the first thing that can come to my head is ID cards. Now, when a new employee comes in, you are, depending on the organization, you are providing certain information to the printer. And so it is no longer you that you have access to your employees' information. You have exposed your employees' information to the printer. So that is one of the people that are processing data on your behalf. You do due diligence, employee due diligence once you employ a new employee. You have to provide all the information that you have, even the employees' credentials, their certificates, and all the certification they claim that they have done. You provide it to the company doing due diligence, and that is you exposing your employees to that person. So like that. And also the payment platforms, especially businesses that use a third-party payment platform, to get the job done, because they want to do business with you. To a large extent, your customers, your clients are exposed to these third-party payment platforms, and you need to ensure that they protect themselves, right? So let me just give this broad example. There was a firm or there is a business, right, that has another organization that runs the software for them. Now, through this second company that provides the software platform that they use, they have a connection with another payment platform. Now you can see the information has left the original organization to the software company and finally to the payment gateway. So because the original data processor failed to keep tab and monitor to the best of their abilities the rules against, or not rules against, the data privacy and confidentiality know-how of the other two counterparties, it led to data breach. The payment gateway was very careless with the information of the data processor, and of course, at the end of the day, one of their clients. So those are the risks that you may see. And once that kind of thing occurs, you must be able to trace where the breach could have come from. Keep keep records basically of people that you are exposed to. All right, so I think I'm going on to my last slide now. Yes, so relevant documents or policies that should be handled. This is one of many privacy policy. We've spoken about that, the privacy notice, DPIA framework. So something along how you handle, something along how, okay, let me explain this now. The DPIA will basically touch on where you are collecting data from, how you are collecting it, what may happen to the data. If there's a breach, what do you do? All of this will be in the DPIA. And the DPIA register the data subject access request procedure for a customer that wants to edit, erase, whatever their data. How do they send the request? You must have a procedure around that. The data retention policy. How long are you keeping data? There's some information that you really don't need to keep for so long. Somebody has sent in their CV. You can see from this CV that there is no way in the next 30 years we are going to employ somebody with this kind of, you have no business keeping it. Delete it. But it's important that you have a policy around that, because a company is a going concern. A business is a going concern. People will definitely come and go. It is most likely the owners of business that will be there, especially with Gen Zs. They work 6 months in one place, they are gone. So you need to put in a policy so that when the next people come in, they know what to do with the data that you have. Then procedure for international transfer of data. We have the capital market operators and even fintechs and all that talking about VASPs now and stuff. And we would be finding we already have it now, but it's going to be more in the next couple of years, data flying from one country to the other. So what is your procedure for international transfer of data? And finally, the data breach register, which in my opinion, the NDPC is making us pay too much for. All right, I think that has brought us to the end of our slides. I did not check the final one, like I said. Sophie was in my dreams. All right, I hope I stayed within time, and I hope I've been able to provide a good background before we go to the mentees presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ma. We really did enjoy your presentation. I think you were able to just in a few slides, you were able to cover so much, and we really sincerely do appreciate. So while you were speaking, one of our other mentors joined in for the call, and that is in the person of Mr. Ridwan Badmos. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. We're happy to have you in class. So, sir, we'd just like to lastly hear from you before taking presentations from the mentees. Just your own discourse in like the next 15 to 20 minutes, so that we can go over to mentees presentations.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here again, and it's been very insightful listening to the previous speaker, Jadis Olaison. And I think I missed, because I just noticed that, during Ms. Jadis Ola's presentation, I think I have that Samalungu also presented. So I think I missed that. Samalungu is actually a good friend. And one of the people I actually look forward to, kind of learning from in the data protection space, as well as Jadisola, the song. So, and that's as kind of, giving me a very huge confidence that, well, I mean, everything has actually been covered, so to say. Of course, we can't cover everything, but I believe, I'm sure, I mean, I've been listening for quite a while, and I can see that, I mean, the major things that we need to discuss in terms of DPO's responsibilities and all the things that, relate to that role has actually been discussed by the last speaker. So I think I'll just have a couple of comments to make, and I can quickly round up, and we can go to the next thing on the agenda, which is, the presentation, so that we can have more time to talk about if there are any observations regarding the presentations. And then I see that there are a couple of questions that I think we might also want to go deep into. So I have actually been opportune to be part of, I think, almost all of the classes. I mean, from the beginning of the program. I think I only missed one, or I think I was there too, but I just didn't have the opportunity to stay till the end of the class. So the points I just want to make from there is that, I mean, from the beginning of the class till now, we've actually been discussing various concepts, various topics under data protection and privacy. And, and I like the fact that we have this topic to be the last topic to discuss. So the point I just want to make is that, I mean, for the mentees, just to recognize everything that we've been discussing. I mean, from the beginning of the program, you can kind of, it's the implementation of all those things that we've been discussing is I think is the crux of what we're discussing today. So it's in terms of implementing all of those things that we've been discussing in terms of when it relates to data protection principles, data subject access requests, where even as far as cross-border transfers or transfer of personal data is concerned, and all of the things that we've actually discussed. We've discussed a lot of things, and even including data breaches, data breach management, which was the topic we discussed in the last class. So all of these things are when you have a DPO in a company, all of these things are actually most of it. I mean, when it comes to data breach management, of course, we discussed that extensively last week, and you understood that the security teams, maybe if you have an information security department, they are a very key, team when it comes to data breaches. I hope you can all hear me clearly. Sorry, I have I know my voice is a bit low, but can you all hear me clearly?
Yes, sir, we can. Yes, sir, we can.
Great, thank you. So, so all of those things are, I mean, just kind of, you should just take a look back, into all of those things that we discussed and how this can be implemented. I think the major things after mentioning the fact that all of the topics and concepts we discussed in the past are they belong to the critical, role of a DPO, of a data protection officer. I think the next thing I just want to highlight is as regards the challenges, because this is just, I mean, everything we've been discussing are, the conceptual, the concept, so to say, I mean, and that's the reason I also I like the classes all from the beginning, because I mean, we've been engaged from the beginning by practitioners professionals in the space that are working in that space. They are not just lecturers that don't kind of get their hands dirty in the space. So these are professionals that share their experiences with you. So I think that's one of the benefits I believe all of the mentees can take away from this program. But additionally, you can we're getting everything kind of in one scoop today. And so when we're talking about, I mean, we spoke a lot about those concepts, especially when we talk about the data protection principles, when we're talking about data minimization and the likes. But the issue lies in operationalizing these things. I mean, making them work in the company, because we're talking about the person, the officer that's going to, that's going to ensure that you're complying with all those requirements of law now. So how do you go about those those implementation? So the one is in terms of when you're managing people, okay, because a DPO will have to interface with different persons in the company, different units or different departments. So how do you kind of interact with all those people? So that's one of the major issues that DPOs might actually face. And there's one thing that's critical that I want to point out there in terms of technical capabilities, because you will all know already that when it comes to digital tools, digital systems, and now we're talking about AI, these issues, privacy issues gets, confounded. They get, more, the privacy arm that could come out of, the use of those kind of digital tools, including AI systems, will kind of get bigger, will kind of be more, the risk is going to be, higher, so to say. So, so I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but what the first thing I just want to, kind of take us of the way is in terms of how do you ensure that you are kind of setting the standard, you are operationalizing all these things. When we talk about data minimization, maybe I should just use concept as an example so that we'll get it very well, even though these previous speakers I believe they've done justice to all this. But when we're talking about data minimization, and let's say you have a data minimization policy in the company that stipulates how employees should collect personal data from customers, or even other other data subjects, because it's not just the customers that are data subjects. So how do you go about that? Even if you are, so let me from there, I think I'll just go straight to the technical issue that I was talking about. So where you have a company that is data focused, they rely, or they use data intensively. So how do you kind of ensure that? Because when we're talking about this kind of companies, examples of this kind of companies would be fintechs. Because fintech companies, because they rely on data a lot, in terms of they have different capabilities of processing personal data. So they might have different types of collection points. And collection points is where how should I call it? Where data comes in. So it could be from the websites where we have, that's the email form on the website, or it could be from, whichever way, or even if they're providing services, maybe like cloud services and the likes. So when you have a lot of data collection points, how do you kind of manage all those things? What you're trying to do is you're trying to implement data minimization. So when you have that policy, how do you ensure that even if you're communicating, if you're facilitating training for the information technology and information security teams, and they have kind of, to an extent, assure you that they are, ensuring that they're trying their best to implement that data protection policy. How do you then, because we're talking about compliance, how do you ensure that they're really doing that if you're not able to, if you're not able to if you don't have that, a bit of background, a bit of technical background, and you're able to, probably understand what they're saying, or you're able to ask them the right questions. So this is, relating to managing people, and also having the right resources as well. So that resources could be the knowledge that a DPO kind of has, and things like that. So I think these are the challenges that, in terms of managing people, in terms of the knowledge that you ought to have, depending on the kind of organization you're working in. So how do you kind of, because so generally the point I'm just trying to make, and I'm going to stop here, is that it's a continuous, I believe a DPO, because a DPO role is going to be continuous, a role that continues to grow, so to say, that you need to develop yourself, continuously. So it's not just about you, being a lawyer or being an information security person, and then you just stay in your lane, and you don't want to, learn from others, because you kind of interact with all the people in the organization, so to say, all the departments, in terms of how they use personal data. So you need to kind of have an understanding of how those things work, and understand the language, and be able to kind of communicate effectively, to be able to have proper compliance, or data protection compliance. So that's just the addition I want to make in terms of how you should kind of equip yourself in terms of the kind of knowledge you need. So you just need to, it's a case, I think we can call it a case by case scenario, depending on where you find yourself. But before then, you need, of course, we have you have to plan. So meaning that if it's something you want to do, if you want to become a DPO, then you really need to look at probably the kind of industry, or the kind of sector, or the kind of company you want to work in, and see the different things that it will take for you to effectively manage that kind of role in that particular space. So I think I'll just stop there. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Ridwan, for that contribution. We really, really do appreciate. So moving on, I think just before we take a presentation from the mentees, I would just like for us to take a quick picture, just a quick screenshot of the class, so that, moving on, we don't have to deal with the lighting issues where we have a number of people in very, very dark places. So please, if you can, I would like to kindly request that you turn on your video camera. Let's take a quick screenshot, and then we'll move on with the rest of class. Thank you. Thank you, Pelu. Thank you, Iniolua. Right, please, can we have more people? Thank you, Faith. Yes, please, can we have more people turn on their videos if that's possible? Thank you very much, Chioma. Thank you, Emmanuel. Yes, please, we can also smile. We can also do well to smile a bit. Thank you. Yes, I think that's okay. That's fine. Thank you so much for complying. So we'll be moving over to the mentees, right? We've had the introductions from the mentors. They've talked about the rules of a DPO, what to expect from a DPO, some of the laws that highlight some of the relevant laws that can come in handy when looking at what a DPO should be doing, the criteria needed to employ or to hire a DPO in that sense. So we want to hear from your presentation based off of your research, what you were able to discover and how you are able to best bring it into class. So please, the two group presenters, you have 10 minutes approximately each for your presentation. Really ensure to try to stick to time so that we can have a more extensive period to have feedback from the mentors. So please, group presenter for group one, you can go ahead and start your presentation.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Choma, and I'll be presenting for group one. Let me share my screen.
All right, thank you, Choma.
Okay, please, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, so our topic for one is navigating data protection regulations, the essential role of a data protection officer. So the first slide says, who is the big guy? The big guy in this question is the data protection officer. So it says you must be wondering the connection between a data protection officer and data protection regulation. So we gave an analogy here saying that just as the police officer's responsibility is to enforce laws and prevent crime, the data protection officer is primarily responsible for ensuring that an organization complies with data protection regulations and safeguards personal data. So in essence, what it just says is that the data protection officer is the person that is the person who is designated to carry out all data protection activities in an organization. So basically, he ensures that all data protection activities or data processing activities in an organization complies with the relevant regulations and that the data of the data subjects are adequately also protected. So second slide says, why is data protection compliance and enforcement important? So first of all, compliance ensures that individuals' personal data is protected from misuse or unauthorized access. So one essence of data protection is to protect the data of data subjects. So as a data protection officer, you must ensure that your organization is compliant rather with that term, in the sense that every data coming into your organization should be protected from misuse, unauthorized access, or breach. This preserves the data subject's fundamental human right to privacy as enshrined in the Constitution. So the second one says responsible data handling builds trust and enhances a company's reputation. Once your company is known for responsible data management and you are not subject, or rather you're not party to various breaches, it helps build your company's reputation. For example, we all know the Fidelity Bank breach that currently happened. So now that that information has already been out, oh, someone with Fidelity Bank is involved in this, or GT Bank is involved in this, definitely the bank's reputation in the eyes of certain members of the society will be reduced, because, oh, if I go to this bank now, my data is not safe. So, but once you are participating or you have responsible data management principles, your reputation is upheld and enhances your reputation. Another one says the laws like the GDPR, the NDPA and the NDPR mandate strict data protection compliance to avoid fines and penalties. So the whole hallmark of compliance is that it is required by the regulatory bodies so as to avoid fines and penalties, because non-compliance can lead to costly legal actions, even from the party whose data has been breached, and also the regulatory body who will fine the organization for breach of the data. So another one here says proper enforcement reduces the risk of data breaches. So once compliance and enforcement is carried out or is highly carried out in your organization, it reduces the occurrence of data breaches, because you have in place the proper implementations or the proper systems to mitigate against this breach of sensitive information. Securing data helps ensure smooth business operation. It also prevents disruption from data loss or corruption. So when we all know the life cycle of data, from collection to storing to usage and the likes, once your compliance, or you're ensuring compliance within this data management life cycle, it will prevent the loss of data, because you're protecting your data highly, and there will be no need for loss or corruption of the data. And organizations have a moral duty to protect personal information. So one reason data protection compliance and enforcement is important is that it is a moral duty and obligation of the organization. So I dare say that every organization that exists currently in the whole wide world has a moral duty to protect personal information, and data compliance and enforcement must be one of the top priorities of the organization. So we have here criteria for mandatory appointments of a DPO. Like one of our mentors said, as long as you're handling data, as long as people are coming in your organization, even as far as the church, you are a data protection organization. Like, you have to protect the data. So although the various regulations provides that once a person has shown knowledge in data protection policies or data protection subjects at itself, that is enough criteria for appointment. the GDPR in Section 4, Article 37(5) states that any public authority or body, such as government agencies, public universities, or local council, must appoint a DPO, except for judicial courts. So here, the GDPR sort of widens the scope of institutions and organizations that must have a DPO. So it says any public authority, any at all, or body, government, organizations, public universities, local council must appoint a DPO. Then, except for judicial courts in judicial capacity, because that is more of a sensitive area. Then, secondly, we have core activities involving large-scale data processing. Once an organization carries out large-scale data processing, it is mandated that they must have a DPO, and this is mirrored in Section 32 of this is mirrored in Section 32 of the NDP, which states that a DPO is required in an organization that's of major importance. So major importance here is that you're carrying out large-scale data processing. So we have examples of Facebook, Google, the Amazon, or even WhatsApp, Instagram, Meta, X. They all have data protection officers because they carry out large-scale processing. Then what should one consider before hiring a DPO? So before hiring a DPO, one thing you must consider is the knowledge of, or the expert knowledge of the DPO. So like I said before, the Act mandates that someone who is knowledgeable. Then the GDPR states that you must have professional qualities, in particular, then expert knowledge of data protection laws, and also be able to fulfill the responsibilities and duties of a DPO. So once you can show that you have expert knowledge, although currently we have organizations or that have certifications that you can just carry out in order to gain the tag of data protection officer, that is an extra step. But once you're knowledgeable in data protection laws, you can be considered for a DPO. Then also the organization has to determine if the data it processes requires that it has a DPO. But I am of the opinion that every organization is mandated to have a DPO, because no matter how little you think your organization is, you deal with data, you deal with sensitive data, and people regard their data as sensitive. So I feel like every organization should have one. Then one thing you should also consider is, would you be able to give your DPO the independence that they need? Because the law requires that he must be independent. He must, he must be a private. He cannot interfere with his role. Then there must not be conflicting responsibilities. So, what does it typically require to be a DPO? Like I said before, here says a degree in law, information security, data management, or related field is required. Then certifications such as the Certified Information Privacy Professional, CIPP, or similar are highly valued as well. Although the GDPR or NDP or NDPR or NDP guide does not really provide, oh, you must have this, you must have that. Although the NDPA guide goes to say that the commission will from time to time release a sort of assessment to determine if one is compatible to be a DPO. Here, you can still go ahead to have private certifications from these bodies and expert knowledge as well as risk management, compliance skills, and communication and negotiation skills. We all know that platforms like Coursera, Udemy, they all have even Tech Hub Advisory. They all have these courses which you can take to be knowledgeable in data protection. So that is a step. Then we also put out some cases here, some case studies of where companies had a breach, and because they had failed to maybe implement the policies, or they failed to put a DPO in place. So here we also have Article 37 and 39. So Article 37, like I said before, talks about a data protection officer of the GDPR. Then 39 talks about the role or the duties and activities the data protection officer is meant to carry out. Then Section 1.1 and 2.26 of the NDPR also mirrors the same thing. Then we also have Section 32 of the NDP, which says that as well. Then Article 14 of the implementation guide, that is the NDPA guide, also provides for a data protection officer. So that's okay. Sorry, I missed one. So you said over the years, the use of personal data to create realistic and interactive experiences has evolved alongside rapid technological advancements. As civilization expands, organizations increasingly need a well-established DPO to ensure best practices. Considering the sensitivity of data of a common man, it feels good to know that there is a dedicated professional safeguarding our info. In other words, a DPO is pretty important. Like I had said before, I think regardless of whether you handle, large scale processing or you are an organization of major or minor importance, every organization is required to at least put in place a DPO who helps the organizations to make sure that the organization is in line and in tandem with the laws that provides for data privacy so that there will not be a breach. So we have, I think that will be the end of my presentation. Then we have the list of those class. Then we have 2 questions, which I think I will just paste on the chat box so that our mentors can read them and provide answers. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Chioma, for that presentation. Well done to you and to your team members for putting that up. We really do appreciate the efforts and the time people worked to ensure that you had presentations ready for class. So moving on, group 2, please, if you guys are ready, we are ready for you. Please come up and make your presentation. Please, who is the presenter for group 2? Do we have the presenter for group 2 on the call? I don't know why group 2. Okay, do we have anyone from group 2 who can step in on behalf of the group to make presentations? Okay. Please, if you're in group 2, please, can you kindly identify yourself? Or can you kindly identify, sorry. We would just like to confirm why we don't have the presenter for group 2, or why we are not having presentation from group 2. Please, if you're in group 2, please, can you kindly indicate? All right, not to waste any time waiting for the group to start their presentation. In the absence of the group 2 presenter, would be going back to the mentors for feedback on group 1's presentation and also for further additions as it regards the topic. Maybe any information that they felt like the presentation missed out and they would like to add, we will give the floor over back to the mentors to do that. Starting with back to the top, Mr. Samuel. Mr. Samuel, sir, you heard the presentation from Group 1. Please, we would just like to hear from your end. What are your thoughts and take as regards the presentation?
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for the presenter, for Chioma, who presented on behalf of Group 1. I also thank other mentors who have also contributed to today's webinar. Chioma did very well. The presentation is substantially good. I just have issue with the fact that most of the laws cited there are GDPR. She didn't rely much on our law, right? We have the NDPA, we have the NDPR, we have the implementation framework. So I think you were expected to even take a voyage to either GDPR or any other foreign law where our law is lagging in that context. And when it comes to the role of DPO, I think that our law has substantially covered, the relevant topics, except the ones we highlighted, which are that the DPO, the law didn't provide for the independence of the DPO, and also didn't speak much about the confidentiality. That is, a DPO not taking any other role that will probably subject him to processing personal information, because when he's processing personal information, in that case, is more like assuming the position of a controller, because he makes decision, he determines the means and purpose of processing. So there will definitely be a conflict of interest as decided by the Court of Justice of the European Union. I think these are the instances where I expected to make reference to GDPR, but citing GDPR as to the duties of duties of DPO and all of those things. I think we should have relied on our law. We have so many cases right now. We have so many institutions that were penalized by the NDPC, right? There is the Meta issue, the Fidelity Bank issue, and the rest of. So you shouldn't have also relied on GDPR. So these are just some of the things I identified in her presentation. So, but aside this, she did a wonderful job. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel, for that feedback on the presentation. We would be moving on to Ms. Jadisola. Please, Ma, we also want to hear from you feedback on the presentation and maybe any further contributions you would like to add to today's class.
Thank you very much. So the first presenter, actually, Mr. Samuel took the words right out of my mouth. And like he said, Nigerian law is very rich when it comes to the DPO. And I was very conscious in my presentation not to include the provision of the guideline, because that had more, what is it called? It had more things to say about the DPO and their employment, their reporting line, and all that stuff. I was really hoping, to that somebody would have, well, we've not heard from so I was hoping that it would have come up in the course of the presentation and we would take it up. But then also, for somebody that made so much mistakes in her slides, I should not be commenting on other people's slides. But for me, right, PowerPoint presentation has to do a lot with visuals. I got very uninterested because there was a lot going on with the color schemes and the everything. When it is something that is educative, it's not as if I want to bid for a contract or stuff and I will need paparazzis going on. I like to keep the slides simple. It helps, keep focus on the crux of what we are talking about. So like I said, I'd rather in our free time we go back to read. I think it starts from Article 11. I think so. Article 11 of the guideline. I'm not sure if it is 11. A minute. Okay, yeah, from Article 11. So you would see from Article 11, Article 12 of the guideline, you will see plenty things about the position of the data protection officer, reports that they are supposed to be given to management. You will see that in Article 13, because basically the data protection officer is like the interface between the organization and the regulator. And the data protection officer, like I mentioned, is the data champion of every organization. So everything that has to do with data privacy and confidentiality rests on his shoulders. And, Article 11 to 13 for me, right, is all exhaustive. So if you just go back to Article 11 to 14, actually, for your personal consumption. I didn't prepare on it. I would have just taken us through it, but just so that I don't waste everybody's time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that feedback from your end. So please, to group 2, if you guys are still ready for your presentation, we can still take your presentation, but we want to hear from Mr. Ridwan first, give feedback for the presentation made by group 1. Mr. Ridwan, are you with us?
Sorry for jumping in. When do we answer the questions, or is that going to be at the end of all the presentation?
Yes, at the end of all the presentations, we'll just take questions after we're done with all the presentations and feedback.
Okay, I'll be away for like 3 minutes, but I'll be back.
All right, thank you very much, Ma. So do we have okay, Mr. Ridwan is no longer on call. I notice he's not here. So is group 2 ready for their presentation? Okay, thank you. If I'm not mistaken, Deborah, you're the one trying to share screen, I guess.
Yes, sir.
All right, please, you can go ahead and carry on with the presentation.
Okay. Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. I'll be presenting for group 2. Group 2. So our introduction, every organization is required to have a DPO as long as it processes the personal data of data subjects. The NDPR 2019 in Regulation 4.1 sub 2 requires that organizations appoint DPOs whose primary responsibility is to ensure that the organization complies with the NDPA and other applicable privacy policy of the organization. So the DPO is like mentor as rightly said, the DPO is like the one in charge of ensuring that there is compliance with the personal data of the data subjects that the data controller or processor is handling. Okay, so the DPO has certain responsibilities under the NDPA. So the first one is ensuring that the organization is adhering to data protection compliance requirements. So the DPO is responsible for ensuring that the organization adheres to data protection compliance requirements under the NDPA. They're expected to assist the organization in adopting relevant technical and organizational measures to ensure a more effective compliance with relevant data protection laws. The second one is that they are to conduct trainings on data protection compliances. Training. I think training is one of the things that the mentors have talked about a lot. Ensuring employee training is one of the responsibility of the DPO. So the DPO is expected to assign responsibility, raise awareness, and train members of staff and employees on data processing operations. The third one is that they are to provide regulatory advisories to top management, members of staff, and relevant third parties within the organization. The DPOs are expected to perform and inform an organization, its employees, and third-party data processors of its obligation under the NDPA and all other matters relating to data protection. They are also expected to provide advisories on data breaches management and data protection impact assessments and monitor their performance. The fourth one is that they are to monitor data protection compliance. So they are to ensure that the organization complies with the data protection laws, the NDPA, privacy policies of the organization, etc. And they're expected to modify the relevant data protection policies of the organization when new data protection laws or regulations are passed, developed, or updated. So they are to keep the organization in check, in compliance. And then the fifth one is that they serve as the contact person for data subject and regulatory bodies. So they are the contact person. They're the contact person. So DPOs are expected to serve as contact points for data subject and relevant regulatory or supervisory authority on issues relating to data processing within the organization. Okay, so under the GDPR, also the data protection officer has responsibilities that are also similar to what is obtained in the NDPR as well. They monitor compliance with the GDPR and the data protection rules. They provide guidance on data protection obligations. They act as contact point for data subject and data protection authority. Okay, so we also tasked to looking at penalties and fines for non-compliance. So non-compliance with the data protection and privacy regulation may result into significant financial penalties, damaged reputation, and consequences. And some of the penalties and fines associated with non-compliance with key regulations, including the NDPA and the GDPR, but I'll be specific on the NDPA. So section 48 of the NDPA 2023 imposes several, it requires that the data controller or processor remedies the violation, the data breach is the violation of the data protection law. So the order that the data protection, data controller, and or processor pay compensation to data subject for injury or loss or harm suffered by the data subject, pursuant to section 48 subsection 2. And then the other, the data controller or processor to account for profits earned from the violation, pursuant to section 48 subsection 2C of the NDPA. And finally, the other, the data controller or processor to pay a penalty or remedial fee, pursuant to section 48 subsection 2D of the NDPA. So the penalty or remedial fee may be an amount up to the higher maximum amount in the case of a data protection or data controller or processor of major importance, or the standard maximum in the case of a data. I apologize. I'm so sorry for that. Okay, I think the section 48 and 49 of the NDPA provides that the JIIPCC can impose fine in respect to the breach of the provision of the NDPA, which ranges from for data control and processor of major importance, the payment of a fine of 2% of the organization's annual gross revenue of the preceding year, or the payment of the sum of 10 million naira, whichever is greater. So this is very particular to the breach that occurred with the Fidelity Bank, where the NDPA fined Fidelity Bank to the tune of 555 million naira. So it was equivalent to their gross 2% of the organization's annual gross revenue. Then the second one is in the case of a data controller or processor not of major importance, the payment of a fine representing 2% of the organization's annual gross revenue of the preceding year, or payment of the sum of 2 million naira, whichever is greater. Okay, so I'll just go to case laws and court decisions as regards penalties and fines. For SOCO loan, the NITDA, the Nigerian Information Technology Development Agency, fined SOCO Lending Company Nigeria 10 million naira for violating the NDPR this was prior to the NDPA, of course, and for data breach, for data protection violation. So they fined them 10 million naira. For Meta was fined 220 million by the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, also with the NDPC as well, in collaboration with the NDPC. So the Meta was fined 220 million for a violation of data protection laws on Nigerian data subjects. The next aspect of our slides is best practices for data protection compliance. Best practices for data protection compliance. So the very first one for data protection, to ensure data protection compliance, there are some best practices. So our slide picks 5. The first one is the appointment of a data protection officer. So we've talked about data protection officer. We've understood the immense responsibility and role of a data protection officer. So a data protection officer is required to ensure that organizations comply with data protection laws and they do not violate them for any reasons whatsoever. So they are in tune with data protection laws, and every of their company's policy are in tandem with data protection and privacy laws. So companies, data controllers and processors are required to appoint DPOs to monitor compliance and other related policies that have been set by controllers. The second one is that the organizations are expected to carry data protection impact assessment, that's the DPIA. So pursuant to section 28, subsection 1 to 4, which establishes the data protection impact assessment, it provides that when data controllers and processors carry out a new form of data processing, which is likely to result in big risk. So the assessments would first be conducted to identify, evaluate, and minimize possible data protection risk in compliance with the NDPC. So this assessment must be carried out, and it must be continually carried out, especially if the processing is going to result in a big risk for data subjects data, for the data of data subjects. The third one is staff training. Staff training cannot be overemphasized. The principle of employee training cannot be emphasized, and we know that the DPO is also tasked with the responsibility of training employees in this regard. So staff training is necessary to ensure that data protection compliance is met and there is no violation of any sort. So such trainings may be virtual or physical, as long as the goal is to ensure that staff members are aware of their obligations and risk mitigation strategies they must take daily to ensure data protection of data subjects. Then the fourth one is audits. So the first step in getting complaints is to assess exactly where the organization is at the moment in terms of data protection processes. So the first step is to determine whether the organization is a data processor or a data controller. And after that, they will need to ascertain what type of data are they actually collecting and what type of data do they actually have in their possession. So if it's just normal personal data, if it's including sensitive personal data, we must do an audit. The organization must do an audit, a data audit of all that they have in their storage, in their usage, and in their sharing, what they are sharing. At the point of getting the specific number of people whose data they process, they have to submit a summary of the audit report to the NITDA. The regulations take a very broad approach in determining who a data subject is, but the key point to bear in mind is that everyone whose personal data the organization have in the record counts. So also in these audits, I think it helps also in the principle of data minimization, such that the organizations know which data is required and which data is not required, and then they can ensure that, okay, if this data is not required, they can even do without them, or they can erase them from their system. So it will ensure that the more data, because the more data they have, the more data in their possession, the more the responsibility and the more the risk. So in auditing, they're ensuring that, okay, we have this amount of data, and then this is so much responsibility we are taking, and then this is the risk attached to each data that we have, and then they can ensure protection in like manner of each data of data subject that is kept in their possession. Then the final one is data security. Data security. So organizations are to establish and implement information security policies. Section 39 of sub 1 of the NDPA requires data controllers and processors to incorporate appropriate technical and organizational measures, including protection against accidental or unlawful destruction, loss, misuse, alteration, and unauthorized disclosure and access. So security measures include encryption, data encryption, both at rest and in transit, pseudonymization to protect privacy. So controlled and restricted access must be ensured at all times. So this ensures data security and better data protection compliance for organizations. In conclusion, the appointment of a data protection officer is essential for the growth and success of any company or organization. Navigating data protection regulation can be complex, but understanding the potential penalties and fines for non-compliance is essential. Organizations must implement robust data protection programs and stay informed on latest development in data protection laws. It is also important for companies to continuously monitor their data protection practices to ensure that they are compliant with the NDPA and the NDPR 2019 and to avoid penalties as much as possible. Just importantly, doing this protects the data rights of their customers, builds trust with them, and helps the company maintain a strong reputation of data compliance within its industry. Thank you very much. I think we have 2 questions for my group. Do small businesses with 5 to 20 employees need to appoint a data protection officer? And after the license of the data controller or processor has been revoked by the NICTA, can they be gotten back? Can it be gotten back? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Thank you for stepping in on behalf of your group to make presentations for the group. So we'll be going back to Mr. Samuel. Sir, if you have anything, before we take questions, right, if you have anything to say, do you have anything to say as regards Group 2's presentation?
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's important for me to say this because I've heard it over and over again. When you say every organization is required to appoint a DPO, it begs a lot of questions. Yeah, I know we have a little problem, right, with the way the law or the provisions of law, with the way the provision of law is couched. When you look at the NDPA, which is the primary legislation on data protection in Nigeria, at least for now, it says a data controller of major importance. Now, where the problem comes from is with the definition of major importance, both by the NDPA under Section 65 and also the guidance notice that was recently issued. Because when you look at the definitions under that guidance notice, you see that is all encompassing. It included every institution. But I'm aware that there is a pending case before a federal high court, I think either in Kano or Kaduna, contesting the validity of that guidance notice. So yeah, we have problem with that law, but I want to give you a practical perspective and why every institution is not expected or every data controller is not expected to have a DPO. For instance, when you go to along that Iboshere, for some of you that are in Lagos, based in Lagos, you will agree with me that there are a lot of printing shops there. These people collect information. So when you give them paper to type, the information they collect from there that's are stored in their printing machines, they are regarded as data controller in that instance. But of course, it will be unreasonable to expect them to appoint a data protection officer. The same thing applies to some SMEs, right, that cannot afford that. And that is where we have a problem. some of us we've made these observations and we've presented it before the NDPC. And when you look at the GDPR, at least there is a threshold there. I think if you have over 250 employees, or you are processing sensitive data in a large quantity, I don't know if I'm correct, but I think yeah, in that instance, you are expected to appoint a DPO. And the reason why I'm saying that is that I don't want you people to, to have that, to just go or fly away with that information that every institution, every data controller is expected to appoint a DPO. Even the NDPC, they know it's practically impossible for every data controller to have a DPCO. In fact, as an individual that you are, in one way or the other, you are a data controller. So are you telling me that you're expected to appoint a DPO? So yeah. So whenever we are saying that, we must bear this in mind, that is not every institution. So I think for now, you can keep saying maybe data controller of major importance. That's I mean, other observations have been made in the previous presentation, so I wouldn't like to repeat or rehearse it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Samuel. We really, really, really do appreciate that feedback from your end. Ms. Jadesola, do you have any other thing you would like to say as regards the presentation from Group 2?
So I'll just say very well done to the presenter. It would appear as though the presentation from Group 1 and Group 2 are like two sides of the coin, but because I saw that Group 2 focused on the things that Group 1 did not focus on. I just have one minute observation. I would have liked that the case study is tied to the topic for this class. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So for each of the cases that was mentioned, you give us a brief, not so much what happened, and then what could have, like, what effects would a DPO have had on this if the organization had a DPO and it was advising them according. I don't know if you understand my point, so that we tie everything together. It's a very broad course, and this is just one aspect of data protection. It would have been nice to tie those case studies to the topic for today. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
All right, thank you very much, Ma. So moving over to the questions for today, we have quite a few on the chat box. So the first question here, and I still encourage those that have personal questions to indicate so that we can have our mentors help us run through them. So the first question here is, with the increased reliance on AI and machine learning in data processing, how do you foresee the responsibility of a DPO evolving, particularly in managing ethical considerations and bias in data usage? I don't know who to hand over this question to. So please, I would just like to leave the questions in the chat box open to the mentors to jump on them if they can, or if they have anything they would like to say as regards the questions. Mr. Samuel, do you have any take on the question and the number one question there? With the increased reliance on AI and machine learning in data processing, how do you foresee the responsibility of a DPO evolving, particularly in managing ethical consideration and bias in data usage?
Okay, thank you so much. It's an interesting question, and one thing you must appreciate as a data protection lawyer or a consultant, DPO, or whatever field you decide to, or even a data protection engineer, is the fact that the space is ever evolving, right? Keeps expanding as much or as far as the technology. We keep having proliferation in technology. as we keep having new innovative ideas in technology, the scope of a data protection officer will keep expanding. And having said that, one thing you must know is that data protection or privacy is closely related with AI. So it's very difficult for you to discuss AI without discussing privacy. Now, what this means is that a data protection officer, as a matter of fact, can or is expected to be well informed about the principles and the scope of AI, because the data protection officer, in one way or the other, is going to interface with this. I'll give you an instance. When you look at the provisions of our law, it talks about automated processing, right? The data subject having a right to object to automated processing. That provision also mandates data controller to subject automated processing or decisions made without human interventions to certain level of human intervention, like, how do I put it? Decisions that ought to be made without human intervention to be subjected to certain level of human intervention. And also some other obligations there, like the lawful basis that the company is expected to rely when using automated. So when the concept of automated decision making and profiling all borders on AI, because it's AI that makes this decision, right? So a data protection officer is expected to be trained in AI as well. So I understand there are quite differences. Why a data protection officer is solely focused on protecting personal data in quotes. The role, of course, there are AI officer, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that a data protection officer can also play the two roles. So an AI officer is focused majorly on the system, ensuring that AI system, right, are used in ethical manner, ensuring that data used by AI are used in ethical manner. So AI cannot function without data. And on the process, it makes use of big data, right? So on the process of, feeding AI machine learning with so much data, there you will definitely find personal data there. So the role of DPO in that instance is to ensure that the AI is used effectively in a way that will ensure that human rights are not compromised. And one way to go about this is to carry out a data protection impact assessment on the AI, on the processing activities, to also carry out AI audit. Even if you don't have the technical ability, let's say, for instance, you are a lawyer and you are not technically gifted, you could outsource somebody, maybe a data scientist, who could engage in auditing the AI, right, to find out gaps that has to be closed before you can begin to make use of the AI. So the data protection impact assessment, the audit you carry out on AI, will reveal the risk deploying that AI will, have on data subjects. And of course, there are so many other obligations you are supposed to do with regards to personal data as a DPO. You also expected to observe that, ensuring there is the information being fed is actually very accurate, ensuring that a data subject must have right to, delete, object when necessary. So yes, a data protection officer is expected to expand the scope of his or her knowledge, acquire the relevant certifications in AI, understand the functionalities of AI that the company is deploying, the product, and be able to advise appropriately as it relates to data protection. Yeah, that is my take on that question.
Thank you very much, sir, for that answer. Moving on to the second question. The second question here, and I think I'll be directing it to Ms. Jadesola, is as data protection regulation like GDPR and NDPR become more stringent, Do you think there is a risk of organization focusing more on avoiding penalties rather than truly safeguarding users' privacy? How can this balance be better managed?
All right. Thank you very much. What I understand is it's a cause and effect, right? While you are trying to avoid penalties, right? The only way you can avoid penalty is to comply with the rules. Now, the rules were primarily put in place, right, to protect the business. So it is actually, if you look at it in the real sense, impossible to follow the rules, right, while not mitigating the risk that the rules have been put in place to protect. But I understand the angle you are coming from. It is that the reason why you are just doing this thing is when these people just come, let them audit and let us have a no exemption. And you would find that for some DPCOs that are not very detailed, some of them actually don't come on site or ask for necessary documentations. They may just give you a questionnaire and have you feel yes or no. And so because you are trying to avoid penalties, let your answers be yes, or when there is a breach, you don't report, that kind of thing. I understand that there is that part. But if your goal at the end of the day is let us comply with the rules so that we don't get penalized, I can assure you that you would also have done like 70 to 80% of risk mitigation. However, to maintain the balance, to achieve a balance, is that you really understand the reason why the rules have been put in place. You understand what the rules are guarding against, and understand the importance of complying with the rules. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Now, the law have said that you report the data breach. Is it 48 hours or 72 hours? I can't remember, but I know it's a very short period of time. There is a reason why that provision is put in place, is to reduce the amount of time the person if the data has gotten into the wrong hands, before they do too much damage with it, let us step into it and mitigate it. You are expected to do a DPIA. The reason why you are supposed to do it is for your own good, so that before the risk starts to crystallize, you identify and you put systems in place to mitigate it. So the utility in this case is basically just understanding and appreciating, the reason why the laws have been put in place and following it for that reason, not necessarily because you just want to avoid penalties.
Thank you very much, Ma, for helping us with that questions. Moving on to questions from Blessing. The first question here is how do I register a data controller and data processor company with NITDA for my clients? What are the requirements? What are the step-by-step procedure as a lawyer must follow? What's the relative costs for this? Okay, over back to Mr. Samuel. I'm sure you can see the question, sir. Please, can you help us with an answer to that, sir?
Okay, this is more like an instruction, right? I'll try my best to answer, right? But I can assure you I won't provide all the information because it's long. She said step-by-step explanation. That's like taking another webinar or lecture on that. But then, number one, you are not expected to register with NIDA. You're expected to register with the NDPC, that is the Nigerian Data Protection Commission. And that is the registration of data protection, what's it called? Data controller and processor of major importance. So you need to go and read that guidance notice by the Nigerian data. I believe the person asking this question is a lawyer. So what I'll just do is to highlight where you can go and find the answer to your question. So first of all, you need to go and read the guidance notice by the Nigerian Data Protection Commission on the registration of data controller and processor of major importance. It defines what major importance is, and then categorized data processor and data controller and processor of major importance into three strata. We have the ultra high level, that is data processor, data controller and processor of major importance of ultra high level that process personal information of 5,000 and above. And they give us examples of companies that fall under this category. Then we have the extra high level. They process 1,000, the 5,000 within 6 months. Then the extra high level, 1,000 within 6 months. Then we have the ordinary high level that was, I think, 200 personal information or 200 data subjects personal information within 6 months. Now, when you want to register a client, the first thing you will do is to carry out a threshold assessment to understand where the company falls into, whether the company falls under the ultra high level, extra high level, ordinary high level. So by the time you determine where the company falls into, that will also tell you the statutory fee the company is expected to pay, whether the company will pay 10K, 5K. Of course, I know the extra high level is 100K, then 200K. The ultra high level, extra high level, the ultra high level is 200K, the extra, either 200 or 250K. The ultra high level, 100K. That is the extra high level is 100K. Then the least or the last one, which is ordinary high level, I think is 10K. So you can now add whatever professional fee you want to add on top of that. Then when you go to NDPC portal, before you can carry out this registration, you must register in the NDPC portal, right? So once you register there and you have access to the portal, you will see the requirements, the information you need, includes the name of the company, where the registered office, the representative of the company, the DPO. I remember Judge Sola talked about the certifications that the DPCO has. You also need that information, the NIN number, the categories of data subjects, the categories of the recipients of personal information, and so many other information you are supposed to populate. So that is how a step-by-step guide on how to register a data controller and data processor major importance. I don't know if this information is clear enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate that at least very quick and precise take to that question. Moving on to the next question here. The next question here is, how do I conduct a data impact assessment, and how do I conduct and file a data audit for my clients? Ms. Jadisola, please, can you help us with this question?
Okay, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, ma.
Okay, so I'll start from the second question. How do I conduct and file data audits for my clients? So data audits can only be conducted by a DPCO, right? That is a data protection compliance organization. I can't remember, but I hope that's the full meaning. So they are actually registered with the NDPC, right, to conduct that particular function. Sure, you understand? So they are the only ones that can conduct an audit, and they are the ones that file the reports with the they are the only ones that file reports with the NDPC. So basically, that is it. Once you are you qualified to be registered as a DPCO, you get the license, and then you have to familiarize yourself with the acts, the guidelines, and all that, so that you draw up like the requirements, right? What an organization is supposed to comply with, the processes that they are supposed to have in place, and the policies they are supposed to have, and things around that. You engage the client, it could be on-site, it could be virtual, and you get evidence of some of the things that they, because of course, my Yoruba people have a proverb, and I'll just say it in English. Even a mad person would typically owe towards himself, right? So nobody would expose them natively. So you get evidence of things that have been put in place. That's that about that. It goes beyond that, obviously, but that's like the summary. Now, how do I conduct a DPI? So basically, like I've said earlier, a DPI is conducted to identify the places where, you know, a breach can occur, to know when are the things that you expect to have, because you have this particular process in place. So as it infers from that definition of a DPI, the first thing is to identify your data collection points, right? You want to identify the places that we are collecting data, and then you conduct a DPI test for each of those collection points. So for instance, on the website, typically, what kind of information are we collecting? How are we processing this data? What is our justification for processing the data? What is the risk that is likely to occur, you know, from processing data this particular way? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So the first is profiling. When you have automated decision making, which is most likely what happens on your website, you have to put in place systems that people can unsubscribe, things like that, you know. What else? How do you determine if DPI is needed? Check whether your processing is on the list of the types of processing that would require DPI. As far as I'm concerned, right, any process that can that would require that you collect data so that you are on the safe side would require that you conduct a DPI. Now, how do you? Okay, let me just say this so that I present a good background. These are the questions that you want to answer in a DPI. Okay, I think that's a better way to approach it. So we've already spoken about where you are collecting the data, how you are collecting the data, how are you storing the data, how do you use the data? When you collect this data, who has access to the data? Who do you share the data with? Do you send this data to a third-party processor or controller? What is your retention period? What are the security measures that you put in place? So for instance, now, you've identified a process, right? Let's pick, let me make this as practical as possible. So let's pick the common one, account opening or event registration. So how do you collect data? Form, whether a physical form or an electronic form. How do you store this data? If it is a physical form, are you using cabinets? If it is electronic, are you putting it in a shared folder that limited people have access to? Or is it just there and everybody can have access to it? Are you just going to leave it on the table when it is done? How do you use this data? Okay, this information that we have collected, are we going to use it to send information to the data subjects about a product that we have, one upcoming event, or after that event, we are not using it anymore. After this process, we are not using it anymore. Who has access to the data? Is it customer service? Is it marketing? You know, who are the people on this team that can have access to it? What is the security measure that has been put in place? How many people have the keys to the vault that it is stored? How many people have access to the electronic folder that it has been stored? Who are we sending it to? What type of personal data is it? Are we just collecting the name? You know, are we collecting the sex, the gender, the tribe, financial capacity? What is your earning power? All of that are the things that you would be considering. How often are we going to be processing the data? How long are we going to keep this data? who are the caliber of people, that we are collecting their data. All of these things are things that you would conduct in in an assessment. So you have it could be like a form that has all these questions. It's not like it's going to be questions. Typically, you would have like I don't know how to explain it now. You would have all these things that I've highlighted. You have a way that it is recorded in the policy or the guideline that you are using. And then by the time you get the answers to all these questions, you are able to determine the possible risk that you have. So for the kind of caliber of people whose data we are collecting, for instance, we are collecting the data of high net worth individuals. So we have the risk that people, that want to have access to their finances may want to have or people that want to just, have an audience with them or something, they will be very eager to have their phone number, for instance. Or if the data that we are collecting would require that people put their earning capacity, you'd find some account opening forms, for instance, for maybe people that want to do investment or stuff, have what is the range of your salary per month or annually, or how much are you looking to invest. So you can have like people that do cyber acts and stuff, try to have, and they want to profile their targets, and you have to make sure that they don't have access to those kind of records, so that you don't make your clients victims. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. So by the time you are able to provide all these things, then you are able to identify and assess the risk. You are able to mitigate the risk. Then you know the kind of controls you want to put in place so that this risk is mitigated. For instance, we will not use hard copy forms because it is difficult to maintain for an event. We will not use hard copy forms because it is difficult to, control who is able to see other people's data. For a soft copy form, we reduce the number of persons that will receive it. So for instance, if somebody is sending in an account opening detail, we will not use a group email or a company-wide email that everybody has access to. It just goes to customer service, that only the people in customer service have access to. Do you understand? So that way, we have been able to reduce the people that have access to it. So we just want to, we want to market our product to you. Do we really need to know how much you are earning, or is just suffice to know whether you are employed or not? Let's not ask them their earning capacity, so that people are not they don't pay more attention to these things, or it does not make them, it does not make them victims of targeted attacks and stuff like that. So you put in place systems to mitigate the risk, and then you record the implementation. You have a record of, the assessments that you have conducted. So if you have 5 touch points in your organization, you do a DPI for all of them. After doing the DPI, the assessment, answering all these questions that I have highlighted, you do a report, do your recommendation, and you keep it documented for future purposes. Because like I said, people come, people go, but the organization will remain. Ultimately, the essence of a DPIA is to reduce risk to the minimum level, right, for each of your data collection points. I hope I have been able to answer this question. And I wanted to see, Blessing Abi, it looks like after this course, you want to start a business, and you are just, putting 2 or 2 together, but it takes more of research, more than this thing that we have said, to even, from the way the first question was couched, registering with NITA, it points to the fact that you need to do, like, sit down and do more research and stuff. And there are lots of what is it called, resource materials out there, so that you have more color to it. But this is like a summary.
All right, thank you very much, Ma, for that answer. It was very detailed, and we thank you so much for the feedback. So moving on, we still have 2 questions to go, and we'll just be sharing them amongst the mentors, and then we'll be calling it a night. So the first question here to Mr. Samuel is, if the license of a data controller or processor has been revoked, can it be gotten back?
Okay, so I've looked at this question and it's not clear, all right, on what the originator of this question is actually seeking to understand. But I'll approach it in two instances. So the first one, I want to assume that he or she is asking about DPCI, that is data controller and processor of major importance, that is the registration. So I don't think whether that certificate can be revoked. There is no provision in our law, and I've not had any practical experience about this. So because, and I don't think it's possible for them to revoke it, because you're expected to re-register every year. Now, in one of the breakfast meetings that was organized by the Nigerian Data Protection Commission, they said that they will make it compulsory for a data controller and processor of major importance under the ordinary high level to keep registering every year. But for the ultra and extra high level, they are just expected to register once, and then because they are filing data protection audits, the regulator will monitor them through the audits they are filing, right? So I don't think whether that certificate can be revoked. So that is the first angle. And the second angle, I want to assume that this question is centered on data protection, data protection compliance organization, DPCOs, who are carrying out audits. I also know that before you can do that, you're expected to carry out audits. You're expected to obtain registration from the regulator. Yes, and as far as DPCOs are concerned, their licenses can be revoked if they are found wanting in their duties. If they are not carrying out their duties appropriately, if they are not auditing data controllers very well, right? Or maybe the regulator looks at their audit reports and is not all encompassing, they can revoke that license. And when they revoke the license, either the renewal of that license or getting it back will be subject to whatever decision the NDPC has taken, right? So they can decide to say they are suspending this license pending when you do this. They will just suspend, they can subject the suspension to, certain condition. So in that instance, it's when the DPCO fulfills that condition, that is when that license can be gotten back. So, but for the first instance I gave, it hasn't happened before, and I don't think it will happen based on the reasons I gave. So I don't know whether that answers the question, or if the person can clarify what he or she is actually answering, asking for, then that will help me to address the issue better. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Okay, like Mr. Samuel said, if you want further clarification, you can just kindly ask in that regards. But then moving on, we'll be taking the last question for today. And the question is directed to Ms. Jadesola. The question is, what are some challenges that a DPO may face in carrying out his or her responsibilities?
So I would start by saying this is the reason why the laws is like very big on the independence of the data protection officer. So for every organization, right, there are two categories of employees. We have the people that are customer facing or customer centric. And then we have the people that are like the line of defense. So it's not that the entire organization should not be customer focused or customer centric, but you would find that some categories are more customer needs sensitive. So you will find people that are in customer service, marketing in particular, management, because the goal for them is to make profit. And then you'll find the people in the defense, that's the compliance, risk, and audit. You know, their major aim or their major focus is on protection, right? So you will find a data protection officer more in the compliance space because it's trying to make you comply with the rules of the rules governing data protection. Now, there is always a clash between these two categories of people, the defense people and the customer-centric people. Now, you would think that management is supposed to be neutral because they are the ones overseeing the two. But like I said, the primary goal of management, right, is to make profit. What I'm trying to say is that there will always be a clash, right? So, but it is left to you to arm yourself with knowledge. And because the law has provided that the data protection officer is probably part of management or have some level of dependence, then you are able to make a case. A DPO should not be somebody that will easily be, shut down by one senior or management or executive employee. So some of the challenges you can face is maybe on the website or something, you are trying to say, no, the consent box must not be pre-checked because it is against the rules. And they are telling you, no, we need to, if we check it first, then we have a larger data of people to send our marketing products to. After all, they have the option of unchecking it. So if we check it first, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, like you tick the box for them, and when they want to, you feel like they should pay attention to it. So if they want to unsubscribe, they should uncheck the box. The law provides that you don't make such presumptuous move for them. Leave it empty. And if I want your marketing materials, let me check the box. You would find often that marketing people are like, no, let's check it. Some people may not check it, they may not see it, they may not this, so that we have a wider range of people to send things to. Those are some of the challenges that you may see. Or when you conduct a DPIA and there is a particular, you think, oh, let's not go about it this way. How about we don't put these forms here? How about we don't put this particular tab here? They say, oh, what if in the future we have a product that addresses these needs? How about we get this information in advance? Just clashes like that, because the two teams, even though they're acting in the best interest of the organization, but they are coming from two angles. One is very focused on profit making, and the DPO, as one of the lines of defense, is focused on protecting the organization. So this is where your challenges will come from. The only way to overcome this is to equip yourself with knowledge. For an organization that is, that is compliant, so to speak, if you put up a good argument, they will bow. So, but you need to equip yourself. Oh, this is a penalty. Let's do a cost-benefit analysis. The penalty of the NDPC is a percentage of your annual turnover. That is a lot. How much are we going to get from this thing that we are risking it? Those are some of the ways that you can overcome the challenges. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ma. I would just like to ask the mentees before we close to just, I think maybe an emoji or a round of applause just to appreciate our mentors for today. It has been really nice hearing from them. They've done so well in highlighting the topic for today, and also not just highlighting the topic, but they've also answered our questions. So please, I would like to see you use your emojis, appreciate them. And I would like to also encourage you all to revisit this session. So much has been said in class, right? We are streaming on YouTube, so you can always revisit the session to catch up on maybe one or two things that you may have missed out. In light of this, I say we have come to the end of today's session. Thank you so much, Mr. Samuel. Thank you, Ms. Jadisola, for your time. for the knowledge shared from the professional point of view, the professional points of view you people have shared and given. We are sincerely and truly, truly grateful. We say good night, everyone, and please enjoy the rest of your evening.